Hey guys, Jim here with Redo Banshee Parts and Accessories, and welcome back to another tutorial video, a instructional video on how to remove the crank bearings from the crankshaft. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be taking these outside crank bearings off, and I'm going to show you a trick to be able to put the new bearings back on easily and without a press. So let's get right to it, all right? So here's the things you're going to need for being able to get these crank bearings off. And what I use is a large bearing separator. And you can get this at Harbor Freight or pretty much any automotive store, but online, Amazon, you're gonna be looking for a large bearing spreader. And let me show you a couple things that you have to do right quick here. You know, you'll notice on these crankshafts that the bearings are very close to the crank web, okay? So what you have to do, these bearing spreaders, what they do is you can see they have jaws, and as they press together, they force the bearing off of the shaft, okay? Now, you can see here that on mine, I had to go ahead and sharpen these. And so I just take like a 4-inch, I take this thing apart, I take like a 4-inch angle grinder with a flapper wheel, and I just grind these, and I make this inside edge real sharp, okay? Because when you get them, they're about an 1/8 inch thick, and they won't fit behind the bearing and the crank web. It just smashes on there, it doesn't work. And so you have to sharpen these so that it can get back behind and force that bearing off. So that's the first thing you got to do, is actually sharpen up your bearing spreader so it can get back there. But now that when you've got that done, it's real simple, it's real straightforward. You're just going to slide it on here like this, okay? Loosen it up a little bit. Slide it in behind the bearing. It's easier sometimes when you do it like this. Okay, like that here. You're going to push it together, tighten it up, and I use an air impact to go ahead and tighten this down. Once you've got it positioned correctly and you've got it finger tight here, I just take our air impact here with a 24mm socket, and we're just going to crank these down. Let's make sure we're going the right way. We're not. All right. So now we're just going to make sure this is all lined up, and we're just going to start cranking these down. Okay, and what this is going to do, this is going to spread this bearing right off the end of this shaft here. You can see it's coming off. This one's coming off real easy. Some of them don't come off very easy, especially if they've been in the bike for a long time. You kind of got to hit these things. You got to go all the way down to where your bearing spreader, the bearing spreader will bottom out against the crankshaft. Don't go too hard, because if that bottoms out against the crankshaft, it can put it can put marks in your crankshaft. It can ding your crankshaft. So what you want to do is you just want to get it just so. And then what I like to do is just take my my little ball peen hammer here, or a rubber mallet, or some sort of hammer, and I just take and I just gently tap. I'll tap the other side. And this thing will come right off. It might take a few taps. It's easier if you kind of put it off the side of the bench here and hang on to it. All right, there we go. So we just tap the bearing right off the end of that shaft there. You don't know how to beat it hard, just give it a little tap. So now our bearing's off this side. Okay, and we can inspect that crankshaft and make sure that we're looking good there. You can see this is a welded crank, and the snout of the crank looks good. It's not all scarred up or screwed up. If this snout of your crankshaft is screwed up at all, or it's got real deep grooves, the flywheel will not lock onto that shaft good. So if it's like that, then you need to just get a new crankshaft. Okay, so the next step is the other side. Now the other side has a 24. In order to get this bearing off, you got to take your gear set and your crank seal off this side. You got a 24mm nut on this side with a convex washer, 2 gears, and a square keyway. And we're going to pull those off real quick. They actually come off pretty easy. If they don't come off easy, then you have to use. Let me grab it here. You may have to get yourself one of these 2-jaw gear pullers. If those gears won't come right off, you can just get you one of these. You can also get these at Harbor Freight. They're real straightforward. So let's see if this gear set comes off. If not, then we may have to just pull it off. And they come off pretty easy with a gear puller. So, all right, take this off. Oh, we're gonna get lucky today, guys. These are gonna come off by hand. Sometimes they come off by hand, sometimes they don't. Some people put those on with a little bit of yamaha bond, right? You know, right where the keyway is. And if they do that, sometimes they're a little stuck on that shaft and you gotta use your puller. But today we're getting lucky. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our gear puller, we're gonna put it back on this bearing. We'll do the same exact thing as we did on the other side, all right? We gotta loosen up our gear puller so it'll fit around the bearing. Come on, almost there. All right, we're good. Okay, so now we're gonna tighten it back up, finger tight. Get it positioned correctly on the bearing. All right, now we're gonna hit it with some air. Okay, so you can see we're positioned nicely on the crankshaft there. All right, we're finger tight. Make sure we're going the right way. Okay. Remember to be careful not to lock this thing down all the way on that shaft, okay? You gotta be mindful of where the shaft is, and you can see down through here that we're getting pretty close, but we're not all the way there, so. Okay, I think we're pretty close to that shaft now, so we're gonna back off, all right? Okay, so now once you've got the bearing spreader, you've got the little gap there. What we're gonna do on this side, because this shaft is actually shorter, we're gonna use our bearing puller on this side, and it's gonna make this come off this shaft a lot easier. So we're just gonna hook that on right here, like this. You're just gonna hook your jaws back behind the bearing. Okay, we're going to just tighten this baby down, and you'll watch this bearing just come right off. As you guys can see that. It just pulls it right off the shaft there. And voila, she's gone. Okay, so now we got both of our bearings off the shaft. Now, what we're gonna do is something that's a little trick that I learned. We're gonna take our crankshaft and we're gonna go put it in the freezer. Put it in the freezer for about 15 to 30 minutes, something like that. And what that does is that gets the crankshaft real, it actually shrinks the metal down a little bit, just enough that you can slide those bearings right on without having to use a press. So I'm gonna go throw this thing in the freezer, and when we get back, I'm gonna show you how to get the bearings. You're gonna warm the bearings up with a blow dryer or a heat gun, and using gloves, of course, you can just slide those bearings right on the shaft, and once they cool together, they lock right down on there. It's a really great trick. And so let me go throw this thing in the freezer, and when I come back, we'll put those bearings on. All right, guys, we're back. We've got our crankshaft, our really chilly frozen crankshaft out of the freezer. It's been in there for about 30 minutes now, so it's good and cold. We've got our crank bearings here ready to go, and I'm gonna show you these. These are actually aftermarket bearings. They're 8-ball bearings, but the factory ones are 6. There's many different kinds of bearings you can put on here. These are a little heavy duty for this crankshaft we're putting on, but what I want you to notice, these both have a groove in them, and the groove on these bearings needs to point out, okay, on both sides. So just make sure that you understand that they need to point out on both sides. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take and we're gonna heat up these bearings. These need to get pretty warm. We need to get them to expand. And we're going to heat them up with our heat gun here. And when they get nice and hot, we're just going to slide them right on here, and they'll just slide on just like butter. Okay, so let's heat these things up. We're just gonna heat up the inside. You got to get these pretty warm for them to slide on. All right, I'm gonna flip it over. Use a glove, guys. These are hot. Don't burn yourselves. I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna do the other side. You can see it's pretty hot. It's already starting to smoke. All right, we've got some steam. We got some smoke coming off of here now, so that means it's pretty hot. All right, let's just slide it right on here. And voila, you see that? It just slid right on with absolutely zero force whatsoever here, guys. So we are good to go there. And I just slide it all the way back to the web. We're good to go. Now let's heat the other side up. We'll put it on, all right? I mean, you can see, I mean, it went right on. I mean, just like slicker than snot. Okay, so now this side, our crank is still cold. Let's heat this bearing up. Do the same thing. Okay, that should be good. Pretty warm. My bench is even. All right. Okay, just like that. The bearing's got to be warm enough to slide right on there once you get it hot enough. If it doesn't slide right on, then that means that you didn't get it quite warm enough, and you got to go back and just heat it up a little bit more. Now, if you get it on there and it doesn't go all the way on, you know, then you didn't get it hot enough. You're going to have to grab your little gear puller, this guy here, okay, and just slide it back off, heat it up some more, and it'll just slide right on. Point being is, with a cold crank and hot bearings, those bearings will just slide right on there, no problem. So that's that, guys. You can see we are on, okay, both sides, and now we are ready to get our cases cleaned up, ready to go, and get our pins put in, get our keepers put in, and we're ready to slap this this crankshaft in here. Now, you will need to put together. Remember, put your gear sets here on the clutch side, and your convex or concave washer, and your crank seal, of course. Now, when you're putting this crank seal on this side, do you see how this has little knobs on the one side? The knobs always go towards the bearing, okay? So it'd be going on like this, okay? So these little knobs, they go towards the bearing. All right, that spaces it out correctly. And then, of course, your gear sets go on just like they came off. So, all right, guys. Well, that's it for this one. Stay tuned for our next meeting, and we'll show you some more cool stuff. All right, till next time. Bye-bye.